Hello everybody, this is Tip Top Gaming here today with another Theros Beyond Death spoiler video. In today's video, of course, I'm breaking down more Theros spoilers. Why don't we jump right into this? To start us off, we have Archon of Sun's Grace. This is actually the second Archon we've seen in this set so far. It's a 4-cost creature Archon 3/4 with flying and lifelink, and it says Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. Now that might not make sense right away, but it has a constellation ability. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. So, the idea here is that you're creating lots and lots of Pegasi, for each enchantment that enters the battlefield. And those all have lifelink as long as this Archon stays on the battlefield. Now, this has some synergy with other Archons, the ones that boost all things to be 3/3s, because lifelink really cares about 3/3s, even if everything is a 3/3. And the fact that this obviously has good synergy with Devotion, as it has 2 white, and it has good synergy with enchantments, as it has that constellation ability, and it has like good synergy with lifelink or like life gain deck, so it's pretty good. And if Archons are seeing kind of a return, I mean there were 2 of them in the last set. If there's only gonna be 2 in this set, this can be all pretty much ignored, but there could be a return of Archons, and that could be a deck. Alrighty guys, let's move on to the next one. Next, we have Vexing Goal. It's a 3-cost 2/2 with Flying and Flash. This is purely here for the limited format. I don't see this being a important card in Standard at all. Too basic, and that's all I have to say. Next, we have Naiad of Hidden Coves. This is a 3-cost 2/3 enchantment creature nymph, and as long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, this is another theme. This is a theme in mono blue of casting things during an opponent's during the opponent's turn, and that's also a really popular deck in Standard right now, both Simic and Izzet. However, I don't think they need this. First off, this is good for enchantments, and it's good for draft because it fits within that format. However, this is going to ruin Standard. This, along with the thing that says whenever you cast your spell during an opponent's turn, draw a card. Now you're making things cheaper. I mean, think about it. Cancel turns into Counterspell, or Sinister Sabotage, or any of those, or any. Oh, this just infuriates me because this also isn't legendary, so you could duplicate this. So you're already in blue. Let's quasi duplicate it. Let's say you pull 2 quasi duplicates. Now spells on your opponent's turn cost 5 less to cast. What? That's crazy. Next, we have Crackin. It's a 5-cost creature Crackin with Constellation. It says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this is another great Constellation ability. I mean, it allows you to, just get more value out of your enchantments, because a lot of enchantments, when they enter the battlefield, they don't do anything right away, which Constellation kind of fixes. It kind of gives an ETB to everything, and it really works, I think, well if you can execute it right. The ability itself is okay. It's a Crackin, which we don't have many of in Standard, so maybe that'll lead to something. Next, we have Whirlwind Denial. It's a 3-cost instant. It says for each spell and ability your opponents control, counter it unless its controller pays 4. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, you might say, hey, paying 4, that could happen. But think about it like this. If we were back in the Field of the Dead days, they would, and Risen Reef, they could have all the Risen Reef triggers, all of the Field of the Dead triggers, or whatever on the battlefield, and you could just cast this, and they may be able to pay for one of it. However, I think the real value here is being able to counter a bunch of abilities. So I think this will be a definite include in maybe Brawl, because some more gimmicky combo decks can go there. Also, it is a 3-cost, pretty reliable spell. I mean, 4 is not nothing. Like 4 mana, that can be hard to do, especially after you cast a spell, especially since you're probably going to want to counter a big spell. But it also allows you to counter a lot of other things at the same time, so it works really well. I like the card. Next, we have Thrix the Sudden Storm. It's a 5-cost legendary creature, Elemental Giant. Both of those subtypes matter in Standard right now. It has Flash, great. That's a sarcastic great. Flying, it's a 4/5, and it says spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. So you combine this with the other thing, and now you're casting like 8-cost spells with Flash for nothing. Oh, and they can't be countered, so your opponents can't do anything about them. And do you want to talk about ridiculous? Let's move on to this next card. Kiora, Best of the Sea Gods. This is a 7-cost mythic Enchantment Saga. Now, we have a 7-cost Menace in Standard. Wow, my voice just got really raspy. But it is a 7-cost, when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. And that's all it needed to say, and it was overpowered. Now let's see what this 7-cost blue enchantment does. First off, it adds 1 to your enchantment counter, but for 7 it better. And it also adds 2 blue to your devotion count, as long as the Saga remains on the field, which again, it probably should. But for 7, you get to create an 8/8 blue Crackin creature with hexproof. Okay, first off, generally if a creature has hexproof, it costs more than it's, like if it's an 8/8, it's not going to cost 8, it's going to cost like 10 or more. Second off, we're in blue. Blue is not supposed to have good creatures, so by giving it an 8/8 for 7, and you don't even have to wait for this. As soon as you enter this, you get an enchantment, a Crackin with hexproof, and more devotion. That's crazy. But let's just continue, because that's not the only thing the card does. I feel like a 7-cost create an 8/8 blue creature, a 7-cost 8/8 blue Crackin creature with hexproof. That would already raise some eyebrows, but let's continue. So, then the second phase says, tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So, since this is happening on your turn, you tap all their creatures, swing with your 8/8. Then their next turn comes up, all their creatures are still tapped, you swing with your 8/8 again. Now you've done 16 damage, tapped all their creatures, so if they were doing anything value-wise with them, and created an 8/8 blue Crackin creature token. Then, you know what we should do? We should add that Agent of Treachery ability on this, but better. So the third turn it's out, or actually it's only the second, because you cast it, you get it that turn, then the next turn, then the next turn. You gain control of target permanent and opponent controls, and then untap it. Again, not non-land, just gain control of a permanent, so they have a really good permanent, that's now yours. This is crazy. I mean, it costs a lot, so I don't know how much this is going to see play in Standard, but, and I mean, Enchantment Revival isn't as plentiful as something like Agent of Treachery is, but it is crazy. Next, we have Eaten Alive. It's a 4-cost instant. It says exile target creature or planeswalker. Look at the top card of your library. You may put that card in your graveyard. Let me simplify this. This is a 4-cost instant. It says exile target creature or planeswalker, surveil 1. I think this is a really crazy card. Okay, so for 1 more than murder, because murder is kind of like the murder spell, based on the name. But for 1 more, and it also isn't double black, so it's less restrictive in a multicolored deck. You can not only hit planeswalkers, but you can also exile them, plus you can also surveil. I think that this card will definitely see play. It's unfortunately a rare. I think it needs to be for a limited environment, but I think this will definitely, at least for the next month, take over even something like Murderous Rider, because the gods are definitely going to see some attention, and this can deal with the gods. So, yeah, I think this is a really good card. Next, we have Gravebreaker Lamia. It's an enchantment creature snake Lamia. Never seen that before. It's a 5-cost lifelinker, or 5-cost 4/4 lifelinker in black, and says when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card and put it in your graveyard. Spells from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. So, this is obviously targeted for escape. You want to target a spell with escape, and there's a perfect target for that they spoiled in this set. So, you'll see it here in a second. And then it'll cost 1 less to do, so keep that in mind. This will definitely go in any black escape deck. I don't know how many black escape decks there's going to be. I feel like it was green-white, but I'm not sure. I guess black would be the ones escaping, so I guess that makes sense. Next, we have Arena Trickster. It's a 4-cost creature human shaman, 3/3, and it says whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's a Johnny's Pridemate for Simic Flash. I mean, is it Flash? I think this could see some play. I think it's more for limited, though. However, I do have to say that means that the cast it during your first turn is a red-blue ability in the limited scope. So that's very interesting to see. Next, we have Red of Mountain's Blaze. It's a 2-cost enchantment creature nymph, 1/3. So this is our second nymph we've seen today. It's and it has the ability to pay 3, discard a card, draw a card. Fellow Jank. It's an enchantment, but it'll be good and limited. Gives you 1 red devotion, lets you cycle through your deck and get to get enchantments. So, cool. Careless Celebrant is a 2-cost 2/1 creature, Satyr Shaman. Whenever Careless Celebrant dies, it deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. So, I think this is a nice card. I don't think it's overpowered, but I think it's interesting. Luckily, it has 2 power, so haha, Cavalcade of Calamity doesn't work. And that's all I have to say. Satyr sadder things. Although, I guess I do have something to say. Red Black Sacrifice is going to be a deck, and they've added more cards for it in this set. Or in this, oh, definitely in this set, but in the spoiler video. Next we have Annex Hardened by the Forge. It's a 3-cost legendary enchantment creature demigod. So first off, it has demigod if that ends up being important to any cards. It has enchantment, it has legendary, and it has 2 red devotion. And it says its power is equal to your devotion to red. Whenever Annex or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 red satyr token with this creature can't block, and if it had power 4 or greater, create 2 of those instead. So, this is an interesting card. It encourages you to sacrifice creatures to get more creatures that you can then sacrifice. Sounds like a card I would put in a red black sacrifice deck. I don't know if it'll make the final 60, but I think this definitely should be considered. Think about it like this. You have your black-red sacrifice deck, and you have and you have like just some sort of red cheap creature that you're intending to sacrifice because it deals damage when it dies. Well, you're sacrificing this. Let's say you sacrifice it to Witch's Oven. You create a food. Then, if it had power 4 greater for some reason, you create 2 1/1s, or if it doesn't, you just create 1, and it basically replaces itself and deals damage, and this is kind of crazy. It allows you to keep either chump blocking, sacrificing, it allows you to do all sorts of gimmicky stuff, and I'm sure there's some sort of loop that Annex can perform. I'm not sure, actually. There's another card that I think is more loopable, which is very similar to Annex. Next, we have Perforos's Intervention. It's an X-red spell. It says it's a sorcery. It says choose 1, create an X1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice as being in the next end step. It's okay. And then it says it deals twice X damage to target creature or planeswalker. I think this is really good. If you need to hit them in the face, you can't just hit them in the face, which is good. You have to make sure that they don't have a big enough creature. But if they do have a big enough creature, let's just kill that creature. And so you can kind of do some really interesting stuff here. It's kind of like a fireball, but a little bit more restricted. I overall really like this card. Next, we have Retena, Called to the Hunt. It's a 4-cost legendary enchantment creature demigod. Again, double green devotion. It's a legendary, it's an enchantment, it's a demigod. And its power is equal to your devotion to green. And then it says, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. If you do like a Simic Adapt deck, I guess maybe this wouldn't go in it because you don't want to put counters on all the things you're going to adapt, but in that deck you're probably going to run Biomancer's Familiar anyways. I think this card is interesting. I think it's one of the less powerful gods, but I think it's appropriately balanced. Next we have Mantle of the Wolf. It's a 4-cost enchantment aura, enchant creature, and it says enchanted creature gets +4/+4, so you're getting +1/+1 for every mana you spend, and when it's put into the graveyard, you create 2/2 green wolf creature tokens, which wolves are pretty big, and the fact that they get a token in this set means there might be other things that are producing wolves, which my wolf deck would love. I don't think this will make its way into a final wolf deck, but it is definitely interesting. Dryad of Ilsan Grove. It's a 3-cost enchantment creature nymph, and it says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, you can 2 lands per turn. I know a lot of the times people are like, well, that's kind of lame because you already have to play this, which is 3 costs. That means on turn 3, you have to have at least 2 lands in your hand to make this worth anything. But if you're in a deck that draws a lot or searches for lands or does something like that, this could be interesting. And then the lands you control have all basic land types in addition to their other types. Now, I'm curious, does this add waste? Does this make your lands waste? Because that would be the first one in Arena, like in this version of Arena, which would be very interesting. Either way, very interesting card, definitely going in a lot of Brawl decks. Next we have Siona, Captain of the Please. It's a 3-cost green and white legendary creature human soldier, and it's a 2/2, and it says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal an aura card from among them and put them in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So a nice card that lets you get cards that you need. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So, an aura. So, if you can somehow find an aura that swaps to other creatures for free or by sacrificing the creature, like whenever this creature dies, move all of its auras to another one, and you could pair this with a couple things, and I'm sure there's probably a way to go infinite with this. This card, I really like it. I think this could be a Brawl deck really easily. Next, we have Urtropia, the Twice Favored. It's a 3-cost legendary creature human wizard with Constellation, and it says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying. So this would definitely go in a blue-green counters deck. That's all I really have to say. It's pretty decent. Obviously, you would have to be running a lot of enchantments. Don't know how well this is going to do. Next, okay, here we're starting to get into the giants, the Elder Giants. So there's going to be a cycle of these. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is a 3-cost legendary creature, Elder Giant. Now this is in the evil colors of Simic, because Simic is evil. And it's a 6/6 for 3. But when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. So you can only cast this by sacrificing, which you might be like, how do I get in my graveyard? Well, you can just play it, and then it ends up in your graveyard, but don't worry, next turn, all you have to do is pay 4 and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard to let it escape. However, one thing to note, okay, so you pay 3, and when it says whenever Uro enters the battlefield or attacks, so it pays 3, you sacrifice it, but since it entered the battlefield, you gain 3 life, draw a card, and put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. Hey, a land card from my hand on the battlefield? Does that mean I can pay 4? And I just drew a card, which means I have a higher chance of being able to put stuff in my graveyard, which allows it to escape. This card is kind of crazy, especially because since it has that escape, it can keep coming back, and it's a 6/6 that every time it enters the battlefield and attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card and put a land from your hand on the battlefield. And you put the land on the battlefield after you draw the card, so you're... Oh, this is a crazy card. I mean, just look at this as a 3-cost instant, or sorcery. When it gain 3 life, draw a card, put a land from your hand on the battlefield. That would already grab some attention. Then it has all this ability on top of it. That would be insane. That would be insane. That will be insane. Next, we have Croaks, Titan of Death's Hunger. It's a 2-cost legendary creature, Elder Giant. It's a 6/6. And whenever it enters the battlefield, sacrifice unless it escaped. And again, it double black, double red, exile 5 other cards, so this is very similar, although this one only costs 2. And it says each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land this way loses 3 life. So again, look at this as a 2-cost, each opponent discards a card. By the way, that's not you. And also, in a black-red deck, hey, you're looking to sacrifice things, so you pay 2, let it enter the battlefield, sacrifice it, then kill it, and then all the things you sacrifice that you don't really care about anymore, exile those to bring him back, have him do all of his cool things, deal damage, sacrifice him again. This card bothers me. Red-black is getting way too much support, it's going to become the new Simic, I am telling you now. Alrighty guys, that's going to do it for this video. I know it's been a really long one. There was just a lot of spoilers. I didn't cover them over the weekend because I was busy. I will plan to do that next weekend if they're continuing on next weekend. I believe they are. And yeah, I hope you guys have been enjoying these videos. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.